Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 895B, and today's date is February 16th, 2016, and the title of the episode is, The U.S. Has No Other Alternative But to Push a World War. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, the murder of Justice Scalia is becoming more and more bizarre, and all the information does not fit. This looks like this was an assassination. And William O. Ritchie, former head of criminal investigation for D.C. Police, said the following: as a former homicide commander, he said, I am stunned that no autopsy was ordered for Justice Scalia. You have a Supreme Court justice who died, not in attendance of a physician. You have a non-homicide trained U.S. Marshal tell the justice of the peace that no foul play was observed. You have a justice of the peace pronounce death while not being on the scene and without any medical training, and that he died of a heart attack. What medical proof exists that there was a heart attack? Why not a cerebral hemorrhage? How can the Marshal say without a thorough post-mortem that he was not injected with an illegal substance that would simulate a heart attack? Very interestingly, Scalia's federal protection was removed while he was at the Texas ranch. We were told, now remember, this is not coming from him, this is coming from the mouthpieces that are telling us what happened there. He didn't want protection. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. Scalia's family is out there saying they didn't want an autopsy, but we actually didn't hear from the family. The family has been silent, and their statements as of this point have not been reported. And then we have this pillow over his head. And then we have the Judge Guevara deciding without seeing the body that Scalia died from natural causes, ruled against doing an autopsy, and a counter-opinion offered unofficially by another Texas judge, Bishop, that she would have had some type of autopsy. So something is definitely going on here. And this is not normally what you would see when someone passes away naturally. You would see the medical examiner. You would see them taking the body, doing an autopsy. You would see all of this. And the question is, why did they want this judge out of the way? What was the purpose of this? Well, right now, Obama could use recess appointment to bypass Congress and install a new justice. The window is still open on President Obama's option of replacing the late Supreme Court justice with a recess appointment. The Senate is in the middle of a 10-day recess until Monday, giving Mr. Obama a chance to bypass Congress and install a successor quickly. Will he do this? We'll have to wait and see. But what we also know is there was a vote on climate change. You know, the whole meeting during the false flag in Paris, when we had the hoax that the Islamic State was coming to get us. This was during the same time that all the countries were meeting to talk about climate change, global warming, carbon taxes. And remember, the U.S. Supreme Court this month put a hold regulations to curb carbon dioxide, mainly from coal-fired power plants, which might delay the formal signature of the Paris Agreement. Now, if you remove Justice Scalia and you place someone else in there, guess what? You can have the agenda move forward. You can have the Supreme Court turn the decision and say, okay, we agree with the White House. And we see that they're going to have this signed because they don't care what the Supreme Court says. So this shows us that they already know when they place the new justice in power that they're going to reverse this decision. And this is very interesting. Now, we know that students who are going to college, they end up with a lot of debt because they can't find the jobs out there. On average, every student has between $30,000 and $35,000 worth of debt. And what's very interesting at this point, and we know there's trillions and trillions of dollars in debt outstanding, and a lot of these students have loan modifications because they can't find jobs. They're part-time jobs, living with their parents. And those people who are behind on student loans, they might get a visit from the U.S. Marshal office. In Texas, the U.S. Marshal Service in Houston is arresting people who aren't paying their federal student debt. Paul Aker said that 7 deputy U.S. Marshals showed up at his Houston home in combat gear. So they needed 7 deputies in combat gear to go after a student, an adult, who didn't pay the student loan. Does that make sense? And Paul Aker was saying, I was wondering why they were here. Why are they at my home? I haven't done anything. And they were there to arrest him because he owed $1,500 worth of student loans that he received in 1987. And he said this was totally mind-boggling. And they brought him into court, and they set up a payment plan to have him pay this off. But the U.S. Marshal Service is saying we're going to see more of this. We're going to see more of them come down and find the people who are behind on their student loans. So it begins. They want their money. They're coming to collect. Now, what happens if someone can't meet this? I guess they're going to just modify whatever payment plan you have to get you to pay, or they're going to throw you in prison. Now, the FBI is out there, and they have unveiled their new violent extremist video game to educate teenagers. Just like Common Core is educating our young how the Bill of Rights are really not rights, they're privileges, how global warming is real, how not to add numbers easily. We see that there are certain programs in schools to teach why everyday Americans should not own weapons. And we see right now the FBI trying to push forward what an extremist is. Violent, domestic, it doesn't matter. They're trying to brainwash everyone of anyone that believes the opposite of what the government is saying, that they're bad. Now, do I condone violence? Absolutely not. There's no reason to use violence. Now, if somebody attacks you, yes, you will use self-defense to protect yourself. But to go out there and use violence, I do not condone unless violence is used upon you. The men and women in Oregon, they were not violent extremists. They used no violence whatsoever. They were trying to get people to hear what they had to say. And they tried to go through different channels. It didn't work. They had to gather up documents. And they were showing the world and making a stand and showing that, yes, we have problems here and someone needs to look at this. And this is what made the government very nervous, because it would expose them. Now, things are really starting to heat up in Ukraine. We see Petro Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, has called on Prime Minister Yatsenyuk to resign. Now remember, he was put into power by Victoria Nuland. And we can see right now, Ukrainian deputies collected about 159 signatures, more than 150 required, which will enable them to proceed with no confidence votes in removing Yatsenyuk from office. This means he is out right now, unless something dramatically changes. We see Kiev is planning to close another checkpoint in Donbass on February 17th. And this is 2 or 3 now checkpoints that have been closed down. Kiev right now is looking to get Crimea and Donbass back. And Vladimir Gorbulin, he wrote an article saying that, listen, we will try to negotiate. We will use whatever political power we have. But if we cannot return Crimea and Donbass through political negotiations, we will then resort to an armed force and take it back by force. And this is something that we need to be aware of, that eventually what's going to happen is they will use force and there will be an offensive. This is why the training is continually happening in Ukraine. This is why UK, the US, are still there bringing in military assets. They are getting prepared and ready to make that offensive. And we're going to have to watch that situation very, very carefully. Now, we know the government leaders were out there, especially John Kerry, Obama, telling us how great refugees are. We need to bring them into the country. Now, we realize that the U.S. created this problem in Yemen, in Libya, in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Syria, because of their wars of conquest for the central bankers. And now John Kerry is warning that these migrants pose an existential threat to Europe. So he's done an about-face already. So we see that Russia right now has presented at the UN Security Council on Monday an express review of the most flagrant cases of disregard for international law by the United States and UK. The list covering from the mid-20th century to the present day has been read out loud by Russia's Deputy Permanent Representative to the UN. And we can see at this point they might be trying to push war crimes on the United States at this point. Now, the U.S., Turkey, coalition forces are using the propaganda that Russia fired a missile and it hit the hospital. And they're saying this missile came from the Caspian Sea. The only problem is, once again, there is no proof of this. They didn't provide any proof of this. And Russia says there are no ships in the Caspian Sea fleet that could have hit the Syrian hospital in Idlib with a ballistic missile. So can we see your proof that we've done this? And the United States is quiet about this. Turkey is quiet about this. Why in the world would anyone believe Turkey or the U.S. at this point in time? They've lied so many times. They make propaganda statements, and they never, ever back it up with any proof whatsoever. I mean, Turkey, in the last 24 hours, they have violated Greek airspace 22 times. You don't see the Greeks shooting them down, do you? Now, Turkey is continually shelling into Syria. This is the 4th day now in a row. They have not stopped. And we can see that the window is closing. They're bombing the Syrian area, the Kurdish area, to keep this corridor open so they can keep the supply lines open to the Islamic State. And Russia continually points us out that they are supplying the terrorists because Aleppo is falling right now. And they're running out of time. The window is closing very quickly in this area. This is the Azaz corridor. Now, Turkey is continually pushing the idea that there needs to be a no-fly zone, a safe zone. And they need it because of these 600,000 Syrians that are all on the border. And we need to have this safe zone. So Turkey is planning to send troops 10 kilometers into Syria to establish this safe zone. This is what they're planning right now to do. Now, are they going to be successful in doing this? Most likely not, because if they do invade at this point, this is going to be a very big problem. Now, we know at this point that Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and many other countries, not the US, not the UK, even though they're orchestrating all of this, they are having drills at the same time. Now, is Saudi Arabia going to invade Turkey? No, that would be a suicide mission, first of all. Look, they can't even do anything in Yemen. And second of all, their resources are tied up in Yemen right now, and most of the soldiers that they have are paid mercenaries right now in Turkey, the aircraft and everything else. And this is why Carter was going around trying to put this coalition together for this major offensive. Now, it's going to be very difficult for them just to march in there, because that is a complete and utter invasion. It'll be open to the world to see, and this would be a huge problem. In the meantime, while all this is going on, the Tiger Forces, the Special Forces Elite unit of the Syrian or Arab Army, just entered the strategic thermal power plant located in eastern Aleppo. And we can see part of the plan here with the US, with NATO, with Turkey, is to confuse the situation. That Turkey and these other nations are doing this, the US, the UK, and the Western nations, we have nothing to do with this. We want them to stop. We don't want them to do this. But you have to remember, Turkey is a NATO member. And remember, NATO has AWAC planes. They were thinking about bringing troops in, so they have troop buildup there. They're bringing in military assets into Turkey. And if something should happen, and Turkey gets involved somehow, some way, remember the NATO treaty. Article 5, collective defense, which means that an attack against one ally is considered an attack against all allies. And it seems that this is what they're trying to do at this point. So basically, when Syria and Russia respond to Turkey's aggression by counter-invading Turkey or firing back on Turkey, they're going to use this. And this is why they're holding off. This is why they're not pushing this very hard. This is why Syria and Russia went to the UN and is calling out to the world, saying, look at this. Turkey is firing on a sovereign nation. This is an act of war. And Syria is not acting, neither is Russia. But you could see that Turkey, NATO, the US, they're continually pushing this, because look at this. The drill that they're having is immense. It's Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Bahrain, Senegal, Oman, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Sudan, Kuwait, Morocco, Pakistan, Chad, Tunisia, Djibouti, Malaysia, Egypt. And it consists of 350,000 soldiers, 20,000 tanks, 2,450 warplanes, and 460 military helicopters are all in this for this military exercise right now at this point. What a coincidence that this is just happening all at the same time. Now, if they cannot get the Syrian forces or Russia to do something, the window is closing. Russia and Syria are closing the corridor. We know that Turkey, the US, UK, the coalition forces are going to lose Aleppo. This is going to be a major problem. The window is closing, which means that the US, the coalition forces, are going to have to make it look like that Russia or Syria maybe attacked Turkey, or the Islamic State attacked the US, the UK, Europe. They need an event so big that it will shock the world. Because remember, they want you to go to war. This is not a fight against Assad. This is not a fight against the Islamic State. This is a fight because the system is crashing and collapsing. They know it. They only have a certain period of time. The war would basically distract everyone from what's really going on. All eyes would be on the war. Now, they can't tell you, since we're collapsing and the dollar's dying, we should go to war, so they need to do something big. And it's going to have to be big. And they're going to have to make it seem like this is the reason we need to go. It's going to have to be believable, and it's going to have to kill many people. I don't think they can get away with this being a complete and utter hoax. This most likely will be a dirty nuke, and we know Israel has been testing dirty nukes in the desert. It could be a chemical, biological weapon. This might even be coupled with a cyber attack on the financial system, and that could be coming from China or Russia or North Korea. But whatever they're going to do, it's going to have to be pretty darn big to convince the world that it's time to go into Syria. It's time to pass the authorization for war. It's time to bring in troops. It's time to start the draft. It's time to do all of this right now. And this is what we're looking out for. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.